Just if anyone is new, I'm Hugh Byrne, and I teach with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington and the Center for Mindful Living, which is with a grouping, a sangha, a community within the IMCW, the wider IMCW community. And I'm really happy to be with you. I normally teach the first Sunday of the month. And this Sunday, I'm actually down in near Madison, Virginia. I've just done a week of personal retreat, and I finished today. And so I'm finishing with the class here, and then heading back up to Silver Spring, Maryland. Um, so I hope you're doing well. Hope you're keeping well and um, managing these times we're living in, and as well as you can. And that'll be the theme of our talk today. The practice of loving kindness, that how it's a gift to us in difficult times. It's a gift to us in any times, but particularly, when we're challenged, as Wendell Berry begins his poem, when despair for the world grows in me and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be. He wrote that back during the Vietnam War era, in the around 1970 or so. And it's very relevant today. I'll probably share the poem at the end of the meditation. So what we'll do, just in terms of the format today, we'll begin with a period of meditation, about 20-minute meditation, guided. And then Emily will lead us in some gentle movement. Thank you, Emily, as always. Then we'll have the talk. And the talk, hoping today will be a little bit shorter talk to give time, excuse me, give time for a second meditation. I'd like, if we can, to do a loving kindness meditation, maybe at least see if we can make a 10-minute meditation at the end to finish with. Well, we'll finish with some sharing and announcements after that, but that's the format for today. And I just invite you. We'll move into the sit, the meditation. I invite you to just come into a posture that's comfortable and relaxed. So good to sit with your back straight, and just invite the shoulders to relax and let your hands rest wherever they're comfortable, in your lap or on your knees or on your thighs. And again, if you're comfortable, you can let your eyes close and let the attention drop inward, come down into the body, feel the contact of your body with the surface beneath you. Feel the sensations of your breathing. And you might consciously put to one side plans for later, things you might be doing, worries about the future, thoughts about the past, and just perhaps have the intention of being as fully here as you can be with your experience for this period of meditation. And it can be helpful to take just a few longer, deeper breaths, just to help you arrive and settle. A nice, full, deep in-breath, filling the chest, filling the lungs, and then releasing, letting go on the out-breath. Long, slow out-breath. Again, nice, deep in-breath. A long, slow out-breath, maybe the breath out through the mouth. You might take a few more longer, deeper breaths. Just let your breathing help you settle, if it's helpful in doing that. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. And you might invite a smile or a half smile to your face as a way of what the Buddha called gladdening the mind, gladdening the mind, gladdening the heart. You know, you might think of somebody who it's easy to feel happy when you think of them, or joyful. Maybe a loved one, a good friend, child or grandchild, or a pet. Just inviting the smile. Letting the smile be kind of the attitude with which you meet the day and the world. Just letting your breath come back to its natural rhythm. In breath and out breath. And the attitude that it's helpful to bring to the meditation is one of friendliness, of kindness towards your experience. Just accepting whatever is arising. You know, the poet, Sufi poet Rumi speaks about welcoming the guests. You know, the treating whatever you're experiencing. It might be a feeling of restlessness or a little bit of tiredness, or it might be a calm and peaceful feeling. Whatever is here, see if you can meet it with acceptance. So you're not trying to control your experience or have a particular kind of experience, but more just meeting what is present, what's coming up, and making space for it. Breathing in, just know you're breathing in. Breathing out, know you're breathing out. Your focus, just to help you ground yourself in the present moment, just what's here. Just being aware of breathing in, breathing out. whenever you become aware, your attention has moved into thinking, maybe thinking of the future or the past, planning or remembering something, daydreaming, whatever it is, can just gently and kindly let the attention come back to the body and the breath. Just come back to awareness of your experience. Can this moment be a moment of peace, of presence? Dorothy Hunt says in her poem, "Peace is this moment." She said, "Peace is this moment without judgment, this moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. Peace is this moment without judgment, this moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome." Just see if you can make space for anything that arises in the body, in the heart, in the mind. without holding on to anything, pushing anything away. Just letting everything come, stay for a while, and pass when it's ready to pass. Each moment is a new beginning. So, no matter how long the mind has been off somewhere else or how many times, you can just begin again in any moment, here now. This feeling, this breath, this moment. We'll finish the meditation with this poem by Wendell Berry. It's a poem, The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. You might take a moment to just appreciate the effort you've made to be present, to be here. It's great to be together at this time, this 4th of 4th of July weekend. Um, and what I'd like to reflect on today um, is how really reflect on the time that we're living in and how the Buddha's teachings can support us in these times. I take as a given that these times, I think for probably almost all of us here, are difficult times to be living through. You know, it's kind of an ironic time that, you know, the 250th anniversary, you know, I would say is arriving not under the best of circumstances, perhaps, you know, in terms of, in terms of, you know, there's obviously great things and great continuity, but the challenges that we're facing in this period, challenges to democracy itself, I think, and um, the Buddha's teachings, I think, provide a variety of ways of supporting ourselves and engaging and being in the midst of what's going on, but without suffering from it. And I want to highlight today the what are called the heart practices, the practices of loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, joy in the happiness of another is not, or it's typically how that's understood. And the fourth one, equanimity. And I'll focus particularly on the first, the loving kindness metta, which is the kind of the broadest and most inclusive, really including in the broadest way this quality of friendliness and kindness towards all beings. And you know, I want to reflect that for me, I think we're not living in normal times. We're living in in an unprecedented time. And, you know, what I'm going to be talking about maybe, in one sense, at the beginning, I'll talk about, the situation we're living in through in this country and in the world, but particularly focusing on the US. Um, I'll be talking about it, things we think about as political things, political and policy things. But I don't really think that the issue is about politics or about policy. I think it's much deeper. I think it's about morality and it's about ethics. And I think, it's really kind of the difference between humanity and inhumanity is kind of where we're most challenged. Um, the difference between compassion, kindness on one side and cruelty on another. Um, and I think it really comes down to, you know, to kind of much more of a kind of a moral and ethical um, framework rather than a political one. No. And I want to just share one example as as a paradigm that could speak for 1,000, 100 other, other situations. And I just want to focus on one area that I've been, most involved in, and I know some of you have as well, and that's the area of supporting our immigrant neighbors, at this time. Um, I mentioned it, I think at the beginning, or maybe just before we started, that I'm down in Madison, Virginia, at the IMCW's retreat center, the center that IMCW bought called Seven Oaks. I'm actually staying just a little bit off of the main center at the cabin that's owned by the former owner of, the folks who started Seven Oaks 50 years ago. And then now well, she's in her mid-80s now. Her husband died a couple of years ago, Donovan. But Susan, so I'm here and I've been on just doing a personal retreat for the last week. And a couple of days before I arrived, there was ICE set up a kind of blockade about 5 miles south of here, and they arrested people, they detained people. The number was 49 over a period of time. And, they weren't arresting people on, because they had a warrant for criminal charges. They were basically stopping people because of how they looked, if they looked kind of darker skinned or maybe talked with an accent or didn't speak good English, quote, or, were driving particular kind of, vehicles that looked like they were laborers, etc. And um, dozens of vehicles were left abandoned, basically, and 49 people were taken away. They were separated from their families. Many of them obviously would be breadwinners. And so they're left, families not knowing, where they are, at least for some time. And this wasn't an isolated incident or activity. Over the New York Times reported, I think it was on Thursday, that over a 5 day period, 10,000 people were detained in 5 days, an average of 2,000 people a day detained, to ultimately be, their goal is to deport as many as possible. So I look at this situation and it for me, it kind of flies in the face of compassion. We may, can definitely have different views about policy, about immigration policy, and I believe that you need to have, at least as the world is right now, you need to have some kind of immigration, you know, border, for example. So it's not a question of the politics of it. It's a question for me of arresting, detaining people, deporting them, separating families. And so you have a situation where millions of people in America on this 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence are living in fear. Every day of their lives, they're living in fear. They're not, many are not sending their children to school for fear that they'd be arrested, they'd be detained, as children have been. They're not going shopping or to medical appointments because they fear they'll be arrested, with all the implications of that. And, while for most of us, we're not directly affected. We don't have the fear that if we go outside the door, we might just get swept up in one of these raids or detained when they're stopping people. We have a level of security. And for me, I think it's been wonderful the way people who have that security have been supporting others who don't, in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, when the major sweeps were taking place in Portland, Oregon, Chicago, Minneapolis, and the rest of Minnesota. And I use this as an example of many, many other things, that are happening. Hundreds of thousands of people, perhaps in the millions of people around the world, have died because of the closing of USAID. I know people that I've led workshops with who've lost their jobs, and people, one remove, two remove, three removes from it, are suffering from, the Doge cuts and all of that. And I could give a number of many different examples of um, situations where, um, from a dharma standpoint, the standpoint of suffering and what causes suffering and how we end suffering, um, the the policies, are motivated in a very strong way by aversion, by hatred, or aversion towards the other. The people those people who are coming into the country and quote taking our jobs. Um, there's also a strong motivation of greed, of using the government to make money, as a way of enriching themselves. And so the question really, no need to go any deeper into what's happening because we're all familiar with it. So the question really comes down to, how do these teachings, how can these teachings provide a support, a refuge for us in these times? And that's really what I want to, the theme I want to talk about today. And I think the Buddha's heart practices, the practice, and particularly the practice of loving kindness. Just to say about these four qualities of um, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Gil Fronsdal, the meditation teacher out on the West Coast and a wonderful teacher, He calls these qualities the four faces of love, four faces of love, four expressions of a compassionate and open heart. And the differences are depending on, the differences between them are really depend on what the conditions that they face. And the broadest one is metta or loving kindness. This is unconditional friendliness towards all beings. And it's kind of the most widest, broadest, and most inclusive of these four qualities. Compassion is where that same open-heartedness meets suffering. So it's much more specific to suffering. It's what arises when the heart is open and confronts a person, a being who's suffering, then the natural kind of the response is empathy, caring about the suffering, and wanting to do something to alleviate the suffering. So it's active as well. It's not just caring, it's caring and wanting to alleviate the suffering. So that's the second quality. And third is appreciative joy. It's the joy when in the happiness of another. So again, what the open heart confronts is someone who's doing well, who's happy, has just got married or had a child, or child's graduated from college, whatever it is that they're happy, and it's our own happiness in their happiness, the happiness in the happiness of another, joy in the happiness of another. Called mudita in the Pali language. Mudita, it's a beautiful quality. It's one that we don't, probably in our culture, we don't pay so much attention to. We're more, it's more kind of the Schadenfreude, the happiness when somebody we don't like is something doesn't not very nice happens to them, But this is the exact opposite. It's happiness when others are happy. And the fourth quality is equanimity, that provides a balance between joy and sorrow, and allows us to hold all that's arising, to meet the worldly winds with balance, with steadiness. That's equanimity. So these four qualities, and I want to just focus particularly on metta, on loving kindness, and I just share a few reflections on loving kindness, um, and then move into a short meditation. Um, One of the things about loving kindness, I mean, it's a wonderful quality, and it's a quality that we can cultivate and develop. It's not just something that some people have and some people don't have. You know, Maybe some people are more naturally kind and friendly, but everybody has the capacity to cultivate loving kindness. And when we cultivate it, then we open to whatever is arising, we meet it with friendliness and with kindness. Christina Feldman, who's a teacher based in the UK in Devon, Gaia House, a wonderful teacher as well. She has a book called Boundless Heart, the Buddha's teachings of of kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And she speaks about the key quality of loving kindness is intention. We might tend to think of loving kindness as about how we're feeling. Am I feeling warm and friendly towards this person, my colleague at work, or towards Donald Trump, or towards, you know, whoever it might be? do I have feelings of kindness towards them? And what Christina emphasizes, and I think is really important, it's really not so much about the feelings. It's about having an intention, a commitment towards kindness. It's a commitment to feeling, to developing that quality of welcoming, of friendliness, of kindness. And for me, this kind of shifts it in my relationship to loving kindness, because if it's about feeling it, then I need to somehow create the conditions to feel loving kindness. And I might be able to do that, but I might not. But I can always have the intention of cultivating friendliness, of kindness. I can always do that. And that can be our bedrock, really. Just to go through the world with the intention of seeing everyone as awakening beings, seeing everyone as having Buddha nature, um, even the people who are doing harm, to include them. So it's not so important whether we are actually feeling that. There may be people, people in our life, in our personal life, or people in public life, where we just feel, I just can't feel kindness or friendliness towards them. But all that means is that we haven't yet been able to cultivate the capacity to feel kindness towards them. That what we can keep on doing is deepening that intention, the intention of kindness and friendliness. And then when we do that, those people who we find really difficult, we can more and more include them in that circle of friendliness, that circle of kindness. Christina Feldman says, metta, or loving kindness, is not primarily concerned with how we feel, but with an attitudinal commitment and intention to all moments of experience, an attitudinal commitment, a commitment of our intentions toward all moments of experience. To forsake aversion, we learn to stand next to all events and people and befriend them. So it's really cultivating an attitude of friendliness towards, she says, both people and experiences. So if we're feeling angry, we can cultivate loving kindness towards our own anger, towards our own experience, and recognize it. And like, yeah, this is painful. It doesn't feel good to be caught up in anger or hatred or jealousy or blame. And so just to commit ourselves to be friendly, to befriend our own experience, friend our experience and befriend all beings. She says it's returning again and again to the commitment and intention to abide in kindness and to befriend all moments of experience. So you might just think about it right now, like, how would it be to go through your day, go through your life with the intention of friendliness? And think about it, it's very different than being friendly all the time. I mean, I would think that that's probably pretty close to impossible to, just to be friendly. I mean, some people maybe just naturally kind of have that proclivity, but I think for most of us, it's like we don't feel that all the time, but we can cultivate this intention. That our intention is. And so it's like, if we're meditating and, we're focusing on the breath and the mind goes off, we can bring it back. In the same way, if we notice, we cultivate the intention and we notice that we're feeling angry towards somebody, then we can invite ourselves back in the same way as we come back to the breath or the body. We can come back and say, okay, my intention is to include Donald Trump Pete Hegseth, whoever it might be, my person at work that I'm having trouble with, I'm in conflict with all the time, that my intention is to include them in um, in my aspiration, my intention of loving kindness. Um, so it's a way of being in the world. The Buddha talked about it as the the most noble way of living. The most noble way of living is to live in loving kindness and these other heart qualities. And he said as well that we should always live in one or more of these qualities. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. Imagine just living, you know, imbued with kindness, friendliness. Um, and again, we may not succeed, but we have that we can come back to the intention. We can come back to the intention of including all beings in our in our wishes, our aspirations of loving kindness. Again, a last quote from Christina Feldman. It's a commitment of the heart to the possibility of living in this complex and challenging life without fear and without adding fuels to the fires of ill will. So the other thing that's embedded in what she's saying there is when we're cultivating and manifesting, expressing this intention of loving kindness, there's no room for fear to arise. Fear comes in when we kind of lose our way for a while. We can get caught up in fear, but we can come back again. We can keep coming back to to that intention of metta, of loving kindness, and of the other qualities. I've, in recent times, I practice before I go to bed when I, put my head down on the pillow. I I intentionally incline my mind towards metta, and it feels like a lovely. I find it a lovely way of going to sleep with the intention, of loving kindness. Who knows what happens when you go below the ether, you fall asleep, maybe or the demons might come up there, but you've actually gone to sleep with the intention of kindness, and it feels really like a lovely way of kind of being at that um, time of the day. Um, and just to emphasize, this is just to reflect that when we're caught up in anger and hatred and division, we're suffering. And so, what we're inclining our mind towards is living in a different way, living in a way where our heart is open to all beings, consciously intending kind of to move in that direction. And it's a training, it's a cultivation. It's you can think of it as planting seeds. Each time we wish ourselves well or wish others well, we're planting that seed. And so when we practice loving kindness, and we can do that in different ways, we can do it, you're probably most familiar with the phrases, may I be happy, may you be happy, may safe, peaceful, healthy, whatever. But you can also use visualizations. You can visualize yourself as being happy and other beings as being happy. You can connect with feelings that do arise in the body and in the mind, and you can let them spread through the being, through your consciousness. So there are different ways of practicing, but it's a training. So wherever we are at a particular time, we may feel like you know, that this is a really hard practice for us. When I first confronted the loving kindness practice, maybe when I first kind of started practicing meditation over 30 years ago, I'd say for the first 5 or 10 years, I didn't really, I felt that the practice seemed kind of formulaic. You just kind of repeat phrases, and um, I really didn't get it for quite a long time. Um, but particularly through teachers like Christina Feldman, Sharon Salzberg, Tara Brach, and others, um, I've come to see that these heart practices are essential. We need those. We often talk about the teachings as like two wings of a bird. The bird needs two wings to fly. So these teachings, we need the teachings and practices of insight, of wisdom, of awareness on one hand, but we need the heart practices too, the two wings of the bird. Sri Nisargadatta, the Indian spiritual teacher of the 20th century, said, wisdom tells me I'm nothing. Love tells me I'm everything. Between these two, my life flows. We need that, the wisdom that tells us that we're nothing in, that, but being nothing, we're everything. But we need both of those. We need the practices of the heart. And I think the more we can cultivate and deepen the practice of loving kindness, metta, and the other heart practices, the more we can live in the world, whatever the conditions in the world are, that we can meet whatever's happening with an open heart. This is from the one of the main books of the Buddha's teachings that are known as the Dhammapada. Dhammapada. Um, it said the Buddha said, "Live in joy, in love, even among those who hate. Live in joy, in health, even among the afflicted. Live in joy, in peace, even among the troubled. Look within, be still, free from fear and attachment, know the sweet joy of the way." So live in joy, even among the afflicted. So in these times, these these practices, I think, can be a great support for us, kind of including everyone in our um, in our wishes, of our aspirations of kindness, that everybody be well, that everybody be happy. If you think of people doing harm, sometimes people say, well, if you've got somebody, a dictator or somebody who's doing a lot of harm, why would you wish for them to be happy? Do they deserve to be happy? You know, but you can think of it in different ways. But one way you can think about it is that anybody who's really happy, who's genuinely happy, doesn't cause harm to other people. We just don't do it. When you're happy, when you're peaceful, when you're calm, when you're at ease, you're not inclined to rob people, steal, harm them, attack people. It's just the more we wish people well, the more we're wishing well for all beings. We're wishing for the conditions that person doesn't need to feel so fearful that they harm others or they steal from others, hurt others. Um, it's for the well-being of all that we all be happy, and that's really the kind of the understanding of loving kindness. It's the wish that all beings everywhere be happy, be free from suffering. And it's it's really unconditional friendliness, unconditional love. Um, if it's conditioned, I'll wish you well if you wish me well. If it's bargaining in that way, it's not really loving kindness. It's kind of a shadow of loving kindness. It's not not genuine loving kindness. We have to see the shadow, and then we can kind of come back to, okay, can I can I can I give without wanting anything in return? Just not without expectations or quid pro quos. And it's really an art. These heart practices are an art rather than a science. With that we see what works, excuse me, we see what works best, for us when we cultivate. You know, do we do we have a mind that's more inclined towards the kind of the cognitive, the words and the phrases that keep us focused on inclining the mind towards kindness, or does it help us more to use a visualization? And we'll do a meditation in a couple of minutes, which will be more on the visualization side, and just to see what works best. We can let go of words, and we can just invite whatever comes up. Just invite the feeling of loving kindness, just wishing that for that to arise. So really to see for ourselves what's most helpful, what works for me, what works best for me to deepen loving kindness. I'm going to pause here and we do a meditation. This is a meditation comes from a German-born meditation teacher who died, I guess, about 20 years ago now. If I can't remember the year she died. Ayya Khema. Ayya means abbess, abba of a monastery, but Ayya Khema, Khema, via another teacher, Lee Brasington. Um, it's cultivating. It's a fountain meditation. So we'll take about 10 minutes or so to finish up with this visualization meditation. So just take a moment or two to come into a posture that's comfortable and relaxed. It's fine to do this meditation if you're in a place where you can lie down or sitting up, whatever works for you, or standing, whatever's most comfortable. And just bring your attention to your breathing. Maybe take a couple of deeper breaths. Just letting yourself settle and arrive. And just now imagine that you have within your heart, you have a fountain of love. If you can bring that visual image of a fountain in your heart, a fountain of love. And the water of this fountain, as it keeps bubbling up and spreading, has a beautiful appearance. It might be a particular color, whatever comes up for you. And all of it, the water is filled with love, filled with love. Every drop of water that comes out of the fountain is a drop of love. So let yourself be filled with this fountain of love from head to toe. And just imagine that you're standing under this fountain, and these drops of love are covering you completely. Imagine the fountain dropping down the water, the drops of love. Feel yourself nurtured by the drops of love. And now let the fountain become powerful enough so that the drops of love can fall into the heart of a person near you. It could be someone on the Zoom screen or someone physically near you, or just bringing someone to mind, letting them come in under this fountain, letting the love, fountain of love, drop love on them, on their being. Let the fountain and the drops come into the heart of this being, or bringing other beings in. And including yourself, the drops found from the fountain of love coming down on you, taking in any feelings of warmth or fullness, joy or love. You might make the fountain so large that everyone here, all of us here together in our different places, can stand under it and be drenched with love. Just envision everyone here, the drops of love, well-being coming down on everyone, all of us here together. And just the drops coming out of this fountain, bringing joy to everyone. You might now let the fountain that comes out of your heart use the drops to fill the hearts of your loved ones, parents, live or past, children, relations, animals, pets. Just letting this fountain of love fill the hearts of all these loved ones. Let their hearts be full of joy, full of love. You might let the force of this fountain in your heart be strong enough to include all of your friends. Let them all partake in this joy, love, coming from the fountain in your heart. And if there's someone you don't like, someone you have difficulty with, you might just take that person into your heart so that the fountain of love can refresh and renew the joy in their heart. Let them be bathed in the water, the joy, the love from this fountain of love. And you might just put so much love in the fountain that the spray from the fountain becomes larger and larger and more inclusive. So it reaches far and wide. It includes those who are suffering, individual pain, physical, emotional pain, those involved in conflicts, just letting the fountain go outward so that the drops fall on them and in their hearts, that they might find peace and joy. That the strength of this fountain include all beings everywhere. Feel them being nourished and enriched by this fountain of love and joy. And now put your attention back on yourself and let this fountain of life, of love, remain in your heart to refresh and to strengthen you. And know that this love is always here, always available in your heart. And may all beings everywhere have love in their hearts. So I hope that that might be I hope that that was perhaps another way of practicing loving kindness and including all beings in our heart and training, cultivating, training the heart and mind.